Hi everyone, it's Amanda. Today I'm going to be doing my favorite romance book recommendations. I'm going to be telling you my personal favorite romance books that I've ever read. So these are going to range from taboo romance to sports to fluffy, so it's definitely not in a box. This is just my favorites. So let's just get into it, but be sure to like, subscribe down below for more bookish content from me. I'd love to have you here, and happy month of love. So first we have quite the heartbreaker. We have Heartbreak Warfare by Kate Stewart and Heather Ogeron. So this book took me by a huge surprise when I first read it, because at first I was a little bit mad at this book because we follow infidelity a little bit in this book. By the end of this book, it just pulled me in a way that I was not expecting, and I was just shocked by the amount of emotion that I had for these characters. The tears were streaming down my face, and this book has so much angst, so much forbidden aspects. It really... Listen, the reason why this book just stays in my brain so vividly, I think I read it about 3 or 4 years ago at this point. This book I really thought that I would not like. As I was reading it, up to like the 50% mark, I was like, this is bullshit. Why is she basically flirting with another man and basically cheating on her husband, and she has a son at home? And I was just like, this is not cool. But it just changed my mind. It just really changed my mind. I don't know what to say, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This book follows Katie, our heroine, and she is a wife and a mother to a young son. She's married to Gavin, who is also an ex-soldier. So she re-enlisted for the army, and she gets pulled into Baghdad to serve her time, and Gavin totally understands that this is her duty, and he's ready to take care of his son while she's off in the war, right? And when she gets there, she meets Briggs, who is our love interest in this book. So you can see what's going on with this one. He's flirty, he's full of jokes, and you kind of don't like him at first because you're like, why are you trying to mess with a married woman? And he is flirty from the very beginning. She kind of shuts it down, but you can tell that she still like finds him attractive. She irritated me a little bit in the beginning of the book. With that being said though, obviously I fell in love with this book. Now what happens is a series of traumatic events. So we slowly get to know Briggs and Katie as the book goes along, as they're in this war, and then they become prisoners of war, and so they trauma bond. And what this does is creates this bond that she cannot have with Gavin, her husband, and it's just so sad and heartbreaking, while at the same time being super angsty and super forbidden, and you are rooting for both of these guys. Anyways, eventually we do come back to her life at home, and she is a changed woman. Obviously these events that took place changed her a little bit. She's dealing with a lot of PTSD and just things that Gavin should understand, but she feels like she can't talk to him. She feels like the only person she can talk to is Briggs because he endured the same things as her and they got through it together. And the thing I love about this book is that it's so forbidden, and you feel wrong for rooting for this other man. You feel like Gavin is a great husband and deserves loyalty, but at the same time, you're rooting for Briggs because they have this really believable love story going on. And it was so heartbreaking and so beautiful. I don't know. I loved this book, and it really just took me by surprise, and it will stick in my brain for a very long time. I have not forgotten this. I have never reread it, but I didn't even have to look up the synopsis before doing this video because I remember what happened in this book. So that speaks for itself, I feel. And if you want something that is really emotional and has a little bit of infidelity in there, then you'll love this one. All right, this next one I actually have 2 copies of, which shows my love for it. I have Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan, and then this is the cover with Iris on it from Hello Lovely. And y'all, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know I absolutely love this book. It is, to this day, one of my favorite books of all time. It really has such a women empowerment message to it. But in this one we have a basketball romance, yes, but there's way more to the story than this. And in this one, I guess I like infidelity books because in this one we also have a little touch of that going on. So Iris and August are our main characters in this one. And Iris is already taken in the beginning of this book. She's actually dating this guy's enemy on another basketball team. And their meet cute happens at this bar. She's super into the game and they kind of hit it off. Even though it's just friendly conversation, you can tell that there's kind of sparks flying even though she is taken, and nothing happens or anything. It's just they have a conversation flowing very well. And he becomes a little bit obsessed with her. Yeah, so you're like, okay, what's the big deal? Why is this one of your favorite books? It just sounds like whatever. No, there's much more to this story, and it does have a lot of content / trigger warnings for domestic violence. So in this book, you follow Iris, who is this woman that changes throughout the course of the book, and she is so strong, and you can see her come to realize her strength throughout this book. And that's what's so beautiful about it, and that's why it sticks with me so much. It is absolutely so empowering to watch her story unfold. And I don't want to give away too much. I feel like since I did say that there's content warnings for domestic violence, that's enough to give you an idea of what she goes through. But there's so much more that she goes through, and it's just incredible to watch their love story unfold and see how supportive August is and obsessed with her that he is. And he helps her get through this lowest point in her life and shows her that there is hope on the other side. I have a quote. This is August. He says, "Center. If you were mine, Iris, there would be no doubt what position you'd hold in my life. You'd be center. I'd play you at the 5." Which is a basketball reference, but it's so cute in the book because and you really can't even be mad that there's some cheating because the other guy is a horrible person. So but yeah, scenes from this book are also ingrained in my memories. I read this one about 3 years ago as well, and it has just been a favorite ever since. And I really need to finish the series actually. I've only read this one, even though I said a long time ago that I would finish the rest of the series. But Kennedy Ryan is definitely one of my favorite authors. I was debating whether to put Real on this list as well, which is another one of my favorites, but I like Longshot just a little bit more, but Real has a special place in my heart because of the lupus representation. So if you're looking for hard-hitting emotional romances that are more than what they seem looking at the cover or the summaries, you gotta try Kennedy Ryan. Okay, speaking of lupus representation, I have one of my favorite chronic illness representation books, which is Underneath the Sycamore Tree, which I have quite a few things to show. So this is the indie cover. I love this book. This is how I first read it. And then we have the newest cover, and this one is published through Bloom, yes. And then we have the novella that comes after what happens at the end of this book, and it follows the hero. I cried like a baby with these ones too. This list definitely started with the harder hitting books. I didn't mean it to be that way, but I have some lighter reads on the list too, but these are definitely more emotional, these first 3. And this one follows a step-sibling romance. Okay, so we still have a little bit of taboo elements in here, but what this is really following is grief and family dynamics and a love story. In this one we follow Emery. She has lost her twin sister to the same disease that she's currently coping with, which is an autoimmune disease, lupus, and she is dealing with it as the book goes on. You know, there's back and forth between good days and bad days, and I actually deal with the same thing along with my sister, so it's definitely a more personal favorite of mine. But this book really had great representation of what it's like to deal with an invisible illness and what others think of you, and kind of invalidate you when you're struggling because you can't really see like, oh, you're bruised, obviously you're hurt. But in this case, it's just not that simple. So I think it did a great job at that, and I think the reason why it did such a great job at that is because B. Celeste herself also deals with, I don't know if it's lupus or another autoimmune disorder, but I know it's one. So her writing feels very raw and real. So we follow Emery's not only grief with losing her sister, but also grief with grappling with the fact that she has the same disease. And her living situation doesn't make it any easier. Her mom is definitely really sad, and every time that she looks at her mom, she feels like her mom is only seeing her sister who died. So it's a lot of grief in the room. And so she goes to move in with her dad, who she has been estranged to for 10 years. And so they have to reconnect, and it's very heartbreaking, but at the same time very real. And I just loved it about this book. I loved Caden. He definitely doesn't want to love her. He definitely starts out hating her, but slowly they form this bond that shows her what real love is. And it's just so beautiful, and it's so sad and heartbreaking. If you want to cry, here you go. I had lots of Kleenex when I read this book, and it was so beautiful. Okay, staying on theme with the emotional reads, June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. This one is also published right now, I believe, so it has a new cover. I don't know if you can get this one still or not, but this is the indie version. It came out maybe 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago, I don't remember. But this is my favorite Jennifer Hartman book. I love it so much. It is also a forbidden romance. We have foster siblings in this book, so you can tell my taste. I'm exposing myself a little bit right now, but I love this book so much. It's also very heartbreaking, and it made me cry a ton. It's actually split up into a bunch of tragedies. Like part 1, part 2, and part 3 are named first tragedy, second tragedy, I think. Am I wrong? Hold on. I need to know. Yeah, it actually is. Part 1, the first tragedy, and then it goes on to be more tragedies. So you can imagine this book is very sad as well, but I love to feel things, you know. I love to be heartbroken. But without giving too much away, because I went into this book blind, and I think that you should do the same, but I will say this book follows the childhood of these two characters onward into their lives, and it's very slow paced, it's very character driven, and it is just so well done. In my opinion, you just got to know why Brant really loves June. I couldn't breathe when I was reading this book because of the things that happen. But in this book we start with Brant losing his parents in an awful way, and he ends up going to his neighbor friend's family, and so that's where the foster daughter comes in. She's actually born on the day of this tragedy that happens to him, and so the romance starts out as obviously not a romance. He's just very protective over June and has this really strong bond with her, but as they grow up, things start changing and they go through a lot together. Obviously this is a little bit on the taboo side of things, so if you don't like that, definitely just skip this one. But if you wanted to dabble into one that's not too taboo, I think this one's a good start. And it's really sad, so beware of that, but they do have a happy ending, and it's very beautiful, and I loved every second of it. I think Jennifer Hartman's writing is so unique and just really has a way to put you in your feels, to be honest. I've cried with a lot of her books. Okay, we're officially out of the crying territory now, so you're in safe waters if you're not into tears and Kleenex when you're reading romance books. But I do have a taboo one that I'm sure you know is going to be on this list if you have been to my channel before, and that is Credence by Penelope Douglas. Y'all, I know this is like a taste check, and this will immediately have people clicking off the video if they don't know me, but hear me out. Hear me out. This book is a masterpiece. I'm sorry. This is a taboo romance that follows Tiernan, who loses her parents to suicide, and she's going through it, and her step-uncle gives her a call. She doesn't really know him, and he calls her up and says, hey, you can come live with me in the mountains with my 2 sons. I'm actually your legal guardian. And she's like, whoa, that's a lot, because she's living in LA right now, I think it was, and she's definitely not used to the whole mountain life. But she agrees eventually that this would be a good change for her, and she's dealing with a lot of grief right now, so she needs the change. So she ends up going to the mountains and meeting her step-uncle and her step-cousins, and she might just do all of them. So if you're into that. Why do I love this book so much? It's simply Caleb. He's one of the brothers, and he also doesn't speak. He's very broody, and it's just such a good romance. And I know he has very problematic tendencies, and a lot of people hate this book, but I am simply just into it. I don't know what to say. I loved Caleb. I love this story. There's so much going on. There's so much plot. There's so much to, even if you don't like it, there's so much to talk about with this book. And we actually read this for classic literature, and it was just such a fun book. We also read it for my personal family book club, and let me tell you, none of my family members liked that book, but the book club discussion was so fire. Everyone was screaming at each other and it was great. So if you want something dramatic, this is it, y'all. We have motorcycles, mountains, we have you snowed in, and sexy times. So good. I reread it every year, and I reread this now 4 times and have rated it 5 stars every time. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I just love it so much. I actually had so many of their books listed for this video. I wanted to mention Trish 6 Venom as well because I love that book. It is a bully romance, female. But Credence we had to put in the video. You already know, and it's so spicy. To this day, I've never been more hot and bothered than when I was reading this book. So someone give me some Rex that will give me that feeling again. I've gotten close, but Credence, I need more Credences in my life. Then another one that I recommend all the time, and I feel annoying for putting in this video because I feel like I talk about it way too much, is Twisted Heathens by J. Rose. I love J. Rose, all her books, all her writing is so fire. And this dark romance is my favorite dark romance of all time. Nothing will ever compare. I've never found anything better. I don't know how I'm supposed to find a book this good again. And I love it for very different reasons than the other books on this list. While I still love the romance, obviously, it's a why choose romance. This one is also fire in plot. Okay, it is psychologically twisted. It's basically set in this asylum, and it follows this very unhinged character that you fall in love with, but there's just so much that you don't know, and there's mysteries uncovered throughout the book about all of the different men that she's involved with and her. She's kind of an unreliable narrator, and you just get to see the world through her eyes, and also all of the men, they have their own perspectives as well. But it is so worth the read if you like dark romance. Again, I have mentioned this before, but I compare it a little bit to American Horror Story in many ways, also combined with like Shutter Island in some way in my brain is what's making the connection for me. It's so much fun, especially if you have a past with mental health problems. I'm really exposing myself right now, but if you were one of those people in high school that just were going through it constantly, I feel like you'll love this. But read this and thank me later. My coworker, I made read this book, and she absolutely loves it as well, so I'm very happy about that. It was a risk, but it paid off in the end. Okay, the next one is a monster romance, and that is Soul Eater by Lily Mayne. I really need to continue on with this series. This is a post-apocalyptic male-male romance that follows Win the Soul Eater and then this guy in the military. I forget what his name is, but he is in the military to ultimately destroy the Soul Eater. So the Soul Eater is like this really powerful monster, one of the most powerful, and he fucks shit up every few years, and so they want to capture him and use him for research and whatnot. So during one of these attempts, the Soul Eater does end up killing a bunch of people, but he saves our love interest. And so our love interest is like, why did you save me? I'm kind of shook and also confused because I thought he was a bad guy. And they do end up capturing the Soul Eater, and so the military does end up using our main character to question the Soul Eater and figure out what's going on. But things don't play out exactly the way the military wants them to, and they end up falling in love. So it's really fun. It's really fast paced, and it has a really good plot as well as steamy scenes. So this one definitely stands out as one of my favorite monster romances, thanks to Jess from Books Past Bedtime, bestie girl, for gifting me this copy and also making me read this. I loved it. And last on the list is From Luke Off with Love by Mariana Zapata. So this was actually one of the first audiobooks that I ever read. In fact, I think it was the first audiobook that I tried. And it was at a time in my life that's very different from where I'm at now. I had a very long commute to work. It was about an hour and a half. And so I started reading audiobooks, and Mariana Zapata's audiobooks I was obsessed with them. And this one was so good. It's a slow burn romance between figure skaters and its enemies to lovers. It's so good. There's hurt comfort trope in here, and it's just so fun, and I loved everything about it. So I ended up picking up all of her books, basically. I mean, not all of them, but I read all of the really popular ones. And Colty is also, it would be my favorite if it weren't for it being soccer. I feel like this actually is my favorite. I just don't like soccer, so I feel like I can't say it's my favorite because I don't even like soccer, but I love this story as well. Anyway, Mariana Zapata does great slow burn sports romances, and this one was fire. You should definitely pick it up if you haven't already, and I highly recommend the audiobooks. I love all of her audiobooks. I think it's the same narrator for all of them, but let me warn you, because I was kind of shocked at how slow burn these were. They literally don't even kiss until you're literally almost done with the book. But I really appreciate the slow burn, and I learned to appreciate the slow burn because it really makes you want the characters to be together that much more, and it leaves out the boring parts of when they get together and you're just like, so what's gonna happen next? I guess they're gonna break up, like the third act breakup stuff. And there's just such cute moments in here. If you ever watched the show Spinning Out, which got canceled, you will absolutely love this book. And if you've read this book and you haven't watched that show, you should. It has bipolar representation and a bunch of great stuff. But just know that they didn't renew the season, so you might be upset by that like me, but we can be in it together, so it's fine. But yeah, love this book, love these characters, and love that this was one of my first audiobook experiences. But yeah, those are some of my favorite romance books of all time. Let me know down below any of yours that you think I should pick up, or if we share any similar ones, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!